Hello everyone, so welcome to this impromptu session necessitated by circumstances that unfolded today, and I would say this is the first session that is done for a Gen Z crowd, because this is done at a Gen Z timing. I believe most of my contemporaries are probably asleep now. And let me just set this up. So I was thinking about talking about the cabinet changes, the reshuffling, and a few people were texting me. Hi, Saf. A few people were texting me, and the first person to do so was Megan, and and I. Sorry, and I thought, okay, so I might as well just have this session with her, because she had a few questions, and I was also thinking broadly of expanding the concept of Teh Tarik, and instead of just calling policymakers or politicians, I thought of having people who are, well, I hesitate to use the term influencer because there's a certain connotation to it, but what I would say is people who commented on socio-political affairs, and there's a bunch of them that I think you guys should follow. Chief of whom I think is Joel Lim. He was the one who got me started for this, and you have a bunch of other people like Farisha Isha, whom I don't know personally, but I do follow her stuff. You have Audrey. This is awesome, and she does some commentary which is fantastic as well, and you have Angie as well. I don't know what's her Instagram, ILYBONANGEE, something like that. And Megan, of course, and Megan is a student of political science. She's a friend of mine. She was my former student, and she studies politics, so I think she is a good prof to have, and she can comment and ask the pertinent question. So hi, Megan's boyfriend. So we'll see how this session goes, and feel free. It's going to be extremely informal, unlike the. It's not that the other sessions are super formal anyway, but it will. We really will play by ear, and will. I don't really have a list of questions prepared. I mean, some people have sent me. A few people have sent me, so I have a list of 10 to 12 questions. I've passed all of them to Megan, and she will, in her wisdom, choose which one to ask and to talk about. And she's not just gonna ask questions; she's gonna go back and forth with me as well. So Megan, you can send the request, and I will accept it.
I'm good. Very busy because it's final period.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yes, but I gotta make time for the important things.
Yes, exactly. Some things are bigger than exams and bigger than the
That's
two
right.
of us, right? So, Megan, you want to introduce yourself first, briefly?
Sure. Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Megan. Like Prof said, I am a student in NTU studying public policy and global affairs. I'm in my third year, coming to fourth year, and I mean, besides studying, I also act on TV in commercials, and I use like my social media platforms to talk about like social political issues as well.
Okay, and that's why you are the perfect person to have today. So, Megan, maybe I'll ask you something first. How did you feel when you saw the cabinet changes or the changes to the lineup?
Okay. Honestly, I wasn't that surprised.
Oh, why?
I mean,
Why?
okay. I mean, maybe because like as a like political science student, right? I kind of know that. I kind of knew the moment Heng Swee Keat stepped down, like there would probably be like there would be a cabinet reshuffle, right? So obviously it was just waiting to see like who would go where, but like the main key players like stay the same, right? So I wasn't really that surprised in that sense.
Okay, so what's the sense of people your age? What have they been talking about? What are the key questions that they've been asking?
Honestly, I think the key questions that they've been asking are just really like kind of like basic stuff, like what the reshuffle entails, like how it happens, why it happens. I think not a lot of people like my age really understand the structure of like the cabinet and how like the CEC is formed, how the next like PM is chosen. So I think it's really like about the technical questions like on the baseline.
Okay. So do you have any questions that you think I should be answering first? And by the way, for everybody listening, you can just type in your questions, and we'll try to answer as many as possible.
Yes, okay. I think maybe the first like most important question would be like what the reshuffling is, and how it happens and what it entails. So I feel like we should cover these like basic points first.
Okay, so there are so basically this reshuffling. Okay, so first of all, there was a reshuffle that happened right after the GE, right? So this reshuffle is pretty much not supposed to happen, and it was initiated by the resignation, or not the resignation, the announcement that DPM Heng would step aside, right? And there, I mean, you can see this from the reshuffling. For instance, Minister Ong Ye Kung was barely a year into his transport portfolio, and he is moved to the health ministry. Minister Lawrence Wong was barely a year into the education portfolio, and he is moved to the finance ministry. Of course, he had some experience as second minister, but he's helming it now. So obviously, that's not the ideal situation, right? So that's the first thing. So other than that, so those are the two. There are three major movements, I would say, right? So Minister Ong, Minister Lawrence Wong, and Minister Chan Chun Sik, who moved to education. And of course, there are 7 movements. So those are the 3 main ones. You had Iswaran and Jotio and Tan Sileng as well. But the 3 front runners, I would say, for the PM-ship, those are what I think a lot of people are asking about. And already in the comments, I already see some people asking questions about, oh, is this Lawrence Wong going to be the next PM and stuff? But hold your horses, we'll get there. I don't want to give the punchline away too soon, then people will leave already.
We gotta leave that to the end of the chat.
Yes. Leave that to the end. Yes. Yeah. So that would be the cabinet reshuffle. Now, the CEC, the Central Executive Committee, is slightly different. So the Central Executive Committee is voted by the party cadres. And who is a party cadre, right? A party cadre is somebody who's been selected to be there. And then you have to go through interviews, and you're selected, nominated by an MP. So maybe you've been helping out with the MP for a while, and then the MP puts up your name, and then the CEC, members of the cabinet, will look at you, and they will vet whether you are worthy enough to be a cadre. And then you have 12 elected positions in the CEC voted by the cadres. And that usually tells us how popular each person is within the party. Now, the CEC, the voting for the CEC is not the be all and all, because the PM can just the CEC can co-opt people into the CEC. But it tells us about how popular you are with your own base. So it's still meaningful, right? The CEC is not the cabinet. Usually there is overlap. There are a lot of overlaps, but it doesn't have to be that way. Dr. Tan Cheng Bock, when he was in the PEP, he was in the CEC, but he was never a minister. Yeah. So the CEC is quite different from the cabinet. Did I answer the question, Megan?
Yeah. So I mean, then another question that somebody had was like, how come the cabinet can be reshuffled so easily? Because obviously, every ministry entails like a different job scope, a different set of like skills. Right. And then now, we see Chan Chun Sing like in education, for example.
Right.
So it's like, where does that come from?
Why the smile? Why the smile? Chan Chun Sing in education.
I mean, he doesn't exactly, when you think of him, like education doesn't exactly come to mind,
Okay.
But he's like a paper general, right?
Wow. Okay, so okay, so what I would say is, right, so Minister okay, so that's there are a few things in there, right? So let's explore that them one by one, right? So first of all, when can a reshuffle happen? It can happen anytime. It can happen anytime, right? So it's up to the discretion of the PM, of course, on the advice of his senior colleagues. So it can happen whenever he feels there is a need. And right now, the need is because of DPM Heng stepping aside, right? And the succession plan being impeded or affected, right? So the cabinet reshuffling is a response to that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, what does it take to be a minister? And a minister, right, do you really need to be the person who knows the most about that particular ministry, that particular portfolio? And I would argue no, actually, because you are sort of the leader and you are setting the broad direction and vision for that particular ministry. The nitty-gritty, a lot of times the senior civil servants know better than the ministers, right? Because ministers come and go, they get elected, sometimes they are elected, very rarely they are not elected, not re-elected. But the permanent secretaries are there a lot, and they know the details, the ins and outs of each particular ministry. So I would say it's not that crucial. Not that crucial. Like, you don't have to have been a teacher or a professor to be the Minister of Education, right? You don't have to have been a doctor to be the Minister of Health. I mean, I think it's a benefit, but you don't have to. You don't have to. Right, so I think we do not have to. So I am not sure whether the term paper general is being kind to Minister Chan Chun-sing. So I think yeah, because there are some things that you get from being in the army, right? You get the discipline, you get the rigor, and you get the organizational skills. Of course, there are some downsides to that as well, right? For instance, in the army, it's all about hierarchy. It's all about hierarchy. So how receptive are you to criticisms from people who have less power than you, right? But I don't think that necessarily makes a person not qualified to be a minister. But I think a general who moves to the ministries they have to bear that in mind, that dealing with men and women who are in uniform groups is not the same as dealing with an increasingly demanding and sophisticated citizenry. Yeah. So I think I cover all the bases there.
Yes. Okay, maybe we can like zoom in a little bit, right?
Sure.
Let's talk about like why the shift in the finance ministry has kind of like caused this like entire shift like within the cabinet itself. So like what is the importance of like the finance minister?
Right. Okay. So so there are a few. Okay, all ministries are important. All of them are important. That's why you have a ministry, right? Otherwise, if they're not important, it doesn't make sense to have that portfolio. But clearly, some are more important than others, right? Anybody who tells you, of course, to be politically, if you want to be politically correct, you will say all are equally important, but we know that is not the case. And I would say there are the big five, right? Big five plus one, I would say. So the Ministry of Defense, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, so I see somebody say except MSF lah, it's less important. Yeah, it's still important, but I don't think anybody would seriously say MSF is as important as Minister of Finance. So the big five, MINDEF, Minister of Home Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and you have the Ministry of Trade and Industry, right? So did I say five already?
No,
MINDEF,
I think
MHA, MFA, Ministry of Trade and Industry, and Ministry of Finance. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
So the five of them, and you can see you can add in the Ministry of Education as well. I would say it's probably just slightly less important than the five, but there is something there as well. Now, yes, so law is definitely important, but in this case, it's not much, but it's the position is held by the Minister of Home Affairs as well. So I treat that as one. So these are the big five plus one, right? So Minister Lawrence Wong moving to finance, I think that is definitely important. However, and if you look at the history of, one way to look at which is more important, you look at the history of a particular ministry, where the ministers ended up, right? Like the ministers of transport, they ended up in retirement usually, right? Ministers of finance and ministers of education go on to become PM or DPM, right? So Minister Lawrence Wong becoming minister, that's very important for sure. And I think it tells us a lot about who is where in the hierarchy. But Minister Chan Chun-sing becoming Minister of Education, I think is pretty important as well, because I think this is my assessment. By the way, there's no inside information. Okay, there's no inside information. Anybody who's looking for inside information, I'm not the person to ask. So this is just pure speculation, hopefully based on intelligent guesswork or somewhat intelligent guesswork. So Minister Chan Chun Sing moving to education, I think even though MTI is more important than education, I would say. However, the Minister of Education gets to meet the public far more because a lot of people are directly impacted by that, are directly impacted by the education system. And therefore, Minister Chan Chun Sing sort of, he has a chance to maybe, I don't know, maybe rehabilitate is too strong a word, but I think maybe to improve his public image, I think through the Minister of Education. So to answer the question very, very directly, I think where we are today is the same as where we are yesterday. There are three important, there are three front runners. Minister Lawrence Wong, Minister Chan Chun Sing, Minister Ong Ye Kung, and the three of them are where they were yesterday. So Minister Ong Ye Kung went to health, which is important, especially in the time of pandemic, and the fact that he's a co-chair of the ministerial task force. However, it's still not in the big five, right? So I think they are the three front runners still, but the two of them are probably slightly ahead based on what we know from the cabinet positions. You know, it's a very, in politics, anything can happen. Who knows, right? Who knows? In 3 years' time, it may not be the three of them, right? So you never know. But based on what we know now, right? So there is a comment by Alfian saying that the ministerial rotation becomes a way to prevent ministers from becoming attached to particular ministries and turning them into their power bases. And I think for Ministry of Defense, for instance, right, that has been an important, for instance, you know, the Chief of Army is rotated a lot, and one of the benefits of the rotation of the Chief of Army so that you don't build your own power base, right? Whether that's the intention is a different thing, but that's one of the benefits. Yeah. So there may be something to that as well. There is something to them gaining experience from different ministries as well, because the skill sets may be different as well for different ministries. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, maybe for those who don't have like as much context, you mentioned that Chan Chun Sing entering like, you know, Ministry of Education might be a chance for him to like improve his image. Would you like to expound on that, like the reasons why? And do you think like maybe that was one of the key reasons that he was appointed to Ministry of Education?
So asking me all the difficult questions, trying to
all
get
the
me into
spicy
trouble.
questions.
All the spicy question. Okay, so but the right question to ask, I think. Okay, so just I know this is gonna be an extremely unpopular opinion, and I get that, and it's fine. We can disagree. You can type in your head for me, but I am quite a fan of Minister Chan. Okay, so I think
lose followers after this.
I think he's very brilliant from my interactions with him. Okay, it's not that I have him on WhatsApp or anything, right? But I've been in a couple of sessions with him, and I do find that he's quite sharp and quite brilliant. And what you see is what you get with him, right? So now, yes, I know. I mean, Amanda is saying, "Oh my God, yes, I understand. Nabila is saying, "Okay, time to leave." Okay, I get it. It's okay, guys. We can agree to disagree. Now, I do think part of the criticism towards Minister Chan is it does come from an elitist place. Part of it does come. Oh, he doesn't speak good English. He speaks like a Bing and so on and so forth. So I don't like that strand of criticism, right? However, hashtag cancel Walid. Okay. Cancel culture is real, guys. Okay, so however, I do think that his public image is probably not the best. I mean, he may come across as, from what I've talked to people, and I that was exactly the word I was going to use, Vivid Sparkle. He does come across as condescending at times, and I think that's something that he really needs to work on. I think I think we need to. I mean, he needs to bear that in mind. And I think him going to the Minister of Education is probably a chance for him to do that, to work on the public image. And I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with the comments here. We are choosing leaders and politicians. Often the leader doesn't have to be the best, the smartest person in the room. You don't have to be, right? Because what you need to be able to do is to galvanize people, to set the vision and direction for the ministry and for the country. Yeah.
Okay, and you know, speaking of Ministry of Education, I saw a comment that said, Ong Ye Kung is such a people's person, and it's disheartening to see that he was kind of like, I mean, like he before he was moved to health, he was at transport, right? And that's kind of like
Right.
you can say that he was like sidelined in a sense. Maybe would you like to comment on why that might be the case, and like why he didn't kind of become a front runner for the next,
Right.
as the next PM?
So there were hints. There were hints that he wasn't at the top of the pecking order, shall we say, right? So I remember before the previous, I think it was the 2018 PAP CEC, Straits Times actually ran an article saying that Ong Ye Kung is not in the running to be PM or to be in the to be PM, I think, and according to senior PAP sources, right? And Straits Times wouldn't run that article unless they really got that from the senior PAP source, from whether it's cadres or whether it's office holders, I don't know. So there seems to be that, but it's not a complete sidelining, right? It's still in the cabinet. Yeah, but the Minister of Transport is probably, I mean, as I said, it's an important one, not as important as the other positions, probably. So why that happened, I honestly don't know. Why. But looking at the surveys that we have, from Black Box, and even anecdotally, when you ask people, a lot of them want Ong Ye Kung to be the Prime Minister. I don't know. What do you think, Megan, from your own circles?
I would say that my circle would not really be like a fair representation of the general public's like
None
sentiment.
of our circles are. Yeah,
right?
but
Yeah,
I mean,
no, but
it's
I think
important you
because
need to add up all these circles. Yeah.
yeah, but because like like in a PPGA setting, like political science setting, like Ong Ye Kung is a lot more like accessible, and because of that, like he does have like a good image, right? So when and then with Heng Swee Keat like having like a stroke, and then the whole like East Coast plan saga and how he didn't perform as well during the GE 2020, like all these things were kind of like talked about like in my circles, but I don't really see anybody like having any like strong opinions on like who should be the next PM.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So do they have a strong opinion on who shouldn't be the next PM?
No, I think it was only like doubts about whether Heng Swee Keat could be like a good.
Right.
Yeah, but
Right.
I don't think a lot of that was based on like personal opinion, but rather like seeing what is in the media, and then
Right,
being like,
right.
oh yeah, maybe he isn't like a good
Right.
a good candidate to be the next like PM.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there are a couple of interesting comments here that I wanted to address. Yang Pang 4896 said that we honestly don't have a leader that is half of LKY. I don't think that those kinds of comparisons are useful. We don't have LKY anymore, right? That's just a fact. We have to move on. Okay, so we cannot keep saying that, of course, there will never be another LKY, right? So there's no point harping on that. We just have to work with what we have, right? The second one is Ong Ye Kung's ability to speak Chinese is an advantage in garnering the older generation, the Chinese educated. Just the comment afterwards by Amanda to juxtapose it. Could it be because of his links to Barisan Socialist? I don't think that is the case, but I do think that that would be his strong suit. Ong Ye Kung, the biggest advantage for him, the biggest thing in his favor, I think he can really connect the English educated and the Chinese educated worlds in a way that nobody else can, right? Chan Chun Sing, he speaks excellent Malay, for instance. That would be his strength, right? So it's not a prerequisite to be Prime Minister. It just so happened that the previous three ministers have all spoken excellent Malay as well, right? So that has to be an advantage, especially geopolitically as well. So each of them have their own drawbacks and advantages, as with every human being, right? Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, so I mean, on the topic of Ong Ye Kung, I think someone asked, do you think Lawrence Wong and Ong Ye Kung will be the new Heng Swee Keat Chan Chun Sing duo? So Ong Ye Kung being his Lawrence's second-hand man.
Yeah. So I not second hand, right hand.
Oh, right hand man. Sorry, I was reading right off the message.
right. Okay. Yeah. So the message second hand man, probably. Yeah. So
So right hand, I think it's too early to say. It's too early to say. What I would say is, at the moment, it does seem like the two front runners are still as they were yesterday, which is who are Lawrence Wong and Chan Chun Sing. So I don't think that it's Lawrence Wong and Ong Ye Kung as the top two, just based on the cabinet positions. Yeah. So at the moment, I wouldn't say that.
Okay, so you mentioned, cabinet positions, and I think one of the more popular sentiments that I've seen today on social media is the idea that the finance minister is necessarily the next PM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not all finance ministers have become PM, but the PMs tend. I mean, if you are a finance minister, you have more of a chance to become. But we know that it's not a guarantee just from DPM him. Right? He was the previous finance minister. So we know that. I know the word is thrown about a lot to the point that it's almost meaningless, unprecedented, but we are really in unprecedented times, right? So while history serves as a guide, and I'm using history as well as a guide, I don't think it's definitive, right? So I do not think that just because Lawrence Wong is finance minister, that he's a shoe-in for the prime minister. I don't think that's the case. I would say he's one of the two to be the top, one of the two top candidates.
Right. And would the connection that people make between, being the finance minister and then being the finance minister being the next PM, is that to do with how important the ministry is?
Yes, because it's one of the, I was in a forum many years ago, and by the way, Goh Chok Tong was never the Minister of Finance. He was the Minister of, I'm just looking at it, he was the Minister of Defense, he was the Minister of Health, and Minister of Trade and Industry, right? So, and you have Taman, Goh Keng Swee, they are not exactly, they did not become Prime Minister. So it's an advantage, but it's not a shoe-in, as I said, right? So your question was what again?
Why people make the connection between finance
right. Because
and, yeah.
so I was saying, I was at a forum many years ago, and PM Lee actually said that the two most important positions that he had, I don't know whether he meant the two or the two most or two of the most, right? But he did mention only these two, which are finance and defense, right? Because one is about spending, and everything else hinges on the budget, and that's based on the finance minister, all the other ministries, and the other is about the survival and security of the country, right? So there is a question, why won't you consider Gan Kim Yong as a front runner? Because I don't think he is a front runner. I don't think that that has been talked about, and I don't think it would make sense that he is a front runner. But as I say, a lot of things can change. But at the moment, I don't see him as a front runner. Yeah.
Okay. I saw an interesting comment that said the Singapore political system is successful because we have had strong dictators like Lee Kuan Yew and Lee Hsien Loong. Though I wouldn't really call Lee Hsien Loong a dictator, but okay. And with Heng Swee Keat or Chan Chun Sing or any of the front runners, I don't feel confident in Singapore's future, which I think leads me to my question about the 4G leadership, as well as the 4G ministers. I think one of the sentiments that I have heard is that we don't really there isn't really confidence in the 4G leaders, and it's something that has been going on for a really long time, and somehow I feel like that trust still hasn't been fostered,
right?
Since GE 2020, which was really a signal to the PAP,
right.
that it was not as powerful of a mandate as they had hoped, right? So maybe can you comment on the 4G leadership?
Sure. Okay. So there's a lot. There's a lot in that. So that's a good comment or good question. Well, first of all, I wouldn't call them dictators, right? So I mean, political scientists, we are a bit more careful with the terminologies, right? Because the moment you say, "Oh, Stalin is a dictator," and then the PAP is a dictatorship, and then the term dictatorship sort of loses its meaning, right? So what people would say is Singapore is a competitive authoritarian regime or an illiberal democracy, which one of the two, right? Because you have elections, and the elections are not fraudulent, but the elections are not they are free, but they're not completely fair as well, right? So that's the first thing I would say. Second thing, we must also be careful of romanticizing or soft authoritarianism, as Haikal said, that works as well. Second thing, we must be very careful of romanticizing the past and mythologizing people from the past, right? In PM, when Lee Kuan Yew was PM, towards the end of his reign, the vote share was already decreasing. When PM Go became PM, he got about 61%. But before that, it wasn't that far in Lee Kuan Yew's final general election. Right? So, and the questions that we ask of the 4G are, so that's the first thing. Second thing, the questions we ask of the 4G are the same questions that people ask of the second G when they took over, the 2G, then the 3G as well. However, I would say there is a qualitative difference this time because firstly, there isn't somebody who's heads and shoulders above everybody else. And maybe that's a difference between the 4G and the previous generations of leaders. And secondly, there does seem to be this inability or lack of ability to connect with Singaporeans. And I think the 4G needs to work on that reconnecting with the ground. It helps if you're a good orator, it helps. It helps if you have some charisma. I think it definitely helps. I think they need to work on that. And it's not that this trust cannot be regained. I think it very much can be regained. I think they really need to work on connecting with the ground, understanding people more, and being less authoritative or less authoritarian in many ways. I think they can do that and they should do that. And I think the trust will follow.
Right. So do you think, like with the 4G leaders, the issue is trust, like only trust, or do you think it is also a matter of, capability? Because I feel like there's just been this like idea that they are not as capable as like our previous leaders.
I think that the two I don't think are exclusive. I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think the trust is related to the perception in their capabilities, the beliefs of the electorate in the 4G's abilities. So I think they have to work on that as well. So, and the more they are able to show that they can handle different ministries and they can connect with the people, the more the perception in their capabilities will change as well. So I think the two are very much related. So there is a question by Sean Chong. By the way, some of the comments you see, I don't see. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. I don't know why.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, for those who do not know, that Megan is my social media advisor. She's the one who I go to for anything on Instagram Live. She's the one who basically advises
I'm
me
the
on
force
everything.
behind all the political knowledge.
Yes. So my knowledge about Instagram Live can fit comfortably at the back of a stamp. So only Megan is the one who's helping me mostly. So there is a question from Sean Chong. Why do you think that it's mostly 4G leaders that are moved around while most 3G ministers still retain their posts? Does this signify that the 4G is not prepared to fully take over yet? Yes, that's precisely what it signifies. So I mean, the fact that it's not handed over yet, that also shows that the 4G is not ready to take over, right? Even though PM Lee had intentions initially to hand over.
Okay, I saw a really interesting question actually from Irfanis asking whether moving forward, how can the PAP institutionalize succession planning so that uncertainties like this would be mitigated? And would uncertain succession be the norm in the future? I think that's quite an interesting question because, with Lee Hsien Loong, even though when he kind of like entered this role, he said that he would be, working closely to groom the next leader to like take over. And you wrote in your book that it's something that he has kind of like been a little bit slow about, and he's really like taken his time. So what do you think about that?
Firstly, thanks for plugging the book.
Right, everybody buy the book. I gotta pull it out right now.
That's why you are the right person to have this. So
buy this. Okay,
so thanks, Megan. So that's a good question by Irfan, who's also a PPGA student. He's in year 1. So I think we should expect that uncertain succession to be the norm. Well, I hope it is at least, right? Because the idea that we need to identify the Prime Minister 10 years in advance. I mean, I don't necessarily see that always as useful because sometimes people, even in their cabinet positions, they bloom a little late. Like, for instance, would Minister Lawrence Wong be in the running if it wasn't because of COVID? right? And he basically stepped into a position and he blossomed during a time of crisis, right? If the crisis didn't happen, we probably wouldn't see this in him. So it's okay, I think, for uncertain succession. I don't think we need to know who the next prime minister is in 10 years' time, for instance. And also, I genuinely believe any politician worth his or her salt should want to be the prime minister. Should want. Because if you feel that, you look shocked, Megan. What's so shocking about that statement? What's so shocking about that statement?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just a personal perspective thing, which is that I could never imagine, like, as much as I love politics, I could never imagine myself being like a minister, because every older person, right, when I tell them like, oh, I'm studying politics, I'm like, oh, do you want to be a minister, right? And even if I were to like step into like a minister role, for example, like I could not imagine like having the, like, I don't know, like bravado and like tenacity to, imagine being
but
the
you are
next
not
PM.
in politics, so you're right. So you are not. That's why you're not in politics, right? But if you are in politics, I would want that person to think that he or she should be prime minister, because if you are in politics because you want to change policy or you want to affect people as much as possible, and
Right.
to affect the most number of people, you have to go higher up, right? And especially, and the prime minister is as high as you can go in our system, right? So every politician worth his or her salt, I think, should want to be prime minister, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem, I think, is because we think, oh, there's something not right about wanting to be the prime minister, right? So we expect a certain sense of humility, and I don't know whether you know this, Megan, but when Muslims, right, when they are praying together in a common prayer room with strangers, right? And then everyone at the start, because there will be a leader called the imam, right? Everyone will pretend, oh, why don't you go? Why don't you go? So just to show, a false sense of humility, or maybe a true sense of humility. Yeah, but that's for religion. That's different for politics, right? I do want people who believe that they are good enough to step forward, right? And the fact that you are minister, obviously you should have ambition. So what's my point? My point is there's nothing wrong if in the future we see healthy competition within parties for them to be prime minister. I don't think there's anything wrong or unnatural about that. I think to pretend that should be the case, that's unhealthy, I think, personally. Now, healthy competition doesn't have to lead to splits necessarily. The danger is it can lead to splits. Now, that would be disastrous for the PAP, right? But I think competition within the party is a good thing. Right?
Okay, I'm seeing like a lot of really great questions. Let me get through them one at a time. So I mean, to just end like that question, somebody asked, is the shorter runway for the 4G leadership a mistake by the 3G?
I'm not sure what short. How long is a long runway? I mean, they have been ministers for 10 years. Is 10 years not enough? I mean, I don't know. What do you need 20 years as a minister for you to take over as prime minister? I don't necessarily think it's a mistake. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, 10 years is enough. 10 years is enough. I mean, it's more than enough as a minister, and then to start preparing you to be a prime minister. In many other countries, right, you are the leader of the opposition, then you become the prime minister when you win the next election, right? Some of them have never been ministers before, and then they become the prime minister, and the country still functions. So I don't think you need to have 20, 30 years of experience. So I wouldn't say it's a mistake or oversight by the 3G at all.
Right, okay. And I see this question by Iza Hazi. If there will be more strong opposition party figures as MPs.
Sorry, can you repeat? Just now the alarm came on, so I was locked out for a while. Yeah.
She says, how do you two think the next PM will deal with leading Singapore if there will be more strong opposition party figures as MPs? And I think to add on to this question, like something that I would be wondering is, like, what would the necessary skills be for the next PM to deal with, the changing demographic of voters, like younger voters who want more, like citizen-centric or like more consultative policy making.
Right. Okay. So excellent question by Iza. I think the GE 2020 should serve as a reminder, and I think the messages that we got from the PAP leadership were the right messages where Minister Shanmugam was talking about soul searching and talking about younger people see things differently, especially race and religion. And I think the 4G needs to understand that. And they need to understand that what worked in the past may not work in the future, right? You can imagine that the statement on Raisa Khan probably would not have backfired 20 years ago in the way that it did this time round. Right? So moving forward, I think they need to do less of that. And they need to accept that the opposition, most of them, if not all of them, they are there because they also love the country. They have a different view about how they should run how the country should be run. But that's okay. In the marketplace of ideas, let people compete and the best ideas will emerge. I don't think we need to brand somebody who disagrees with us as a traitor or as subhuman or anything else. And I hope to see that is what the 4G will do later on in the future.
So do you think the 4G leadership is when we will see a more consultative approach?
I don't know, I don't know. So what I would say is generally you have seen a more consultative approach over the years, but I would say probably it's not to the level that many people want, not to the level people want. So I hope that we see this in the 4G. Whether we will, I don't know.
And how do you think that would look like, ideally?
Okay, so ideally, first of all, more PAP ministers, office holders should come on Teh Tarik with Walid.
Yes, that's the most important step.
That's the most important. That would be the best marker, right? To show that they are more consultative and more open, willing to take difficult questions. I think they should come and they should do more. And I mean that in a whimsical way, but also partly seriously. I mean, not my show specifically, although that would be great. But I think they need to engage more and more with people who disagree with them more vociferously. And I think practically you can see that. There are easy ways to do that, like have more consultations with the opposition, for instance. Nothing wrong with that. Or even with civil society people you would have deemed to be, beyond the pale in the past, for instance, right? When Professor Tommy Koh said that Alfian Sa'ad is a loving critic, Professor Tommy Koh is not exactly an opposition lover or anything. He's part of the establishment, and I think that's the way the 4G people should go, right? And I don't always agree with Alfian Sa'ad, but I think he's one of the most brilliant people I wish every time I see him write, I wish I could write like that as well, right? So not just him, anybody else who previously, you think, oh, these are not the people that we should be engaging with. Yeah, so engage. Amrin, somebody said, Haikal said, the TikTok MP, don't remind me of that TikTok, but
I think MPs should stay off TikTok, honestly.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Yeah, I have seen some. Not in Singapore, overseas MPs doing good politically informative TikTok videos. Like Said Sadiq's one, I would say. Have you seen that, Megan?
No, I've not.
I think they're pretty okay. Like I mean TikTok. There's only so. How okay can TikTok be, right? But it's as okay as it gets. Anyway, by the way, Megan is also a TikTok star. The only thing I dislike about her. Yeah, so I think what you say is good advice. That's okay. Sometimes when they go on TikTok, they seem like they are appearing too hard. They're trying too hard. And sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah, so
I think ministers, like, if they want to get on TikTok, they shouldn't follow TikTok trends. They should use it like in an informative way. Kind of like the way like you might use like an Instagram video, for example.
Right. Yeah, I think that's good advice, and I think people can see through pretentiousness. I think increasingly so. So you must try. You must try to be as authentic.
That there is one single name in everybody's mind right now about the MP who should stay on TikTok.
Who
I'm
is?
not gonna say it.
Okay.
You don't know? Walid,
Are you talking about my MP, Bae King?
Yes.
Okay, I haven't seen his TikTok. I haven't seen his TikTok, but Bae King is somebody whom I actually like. He's my MP, so he's very much on the ground.
I like him, and being on the ground is a good thing, but We gotta
That
draw the
doesn't
line
mean
somewhere.
that doesn't mean he shouldn't stay on TikTok. I know. I haven't seen his TikTok videos. Yeah.
I will be forwarding you some after this.
Okay. So that's the first order of business after this chat. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Okay,
Yeah.
so I saw that somebody asked, which of the front runners do you think is the most suitable to working in a collaborative manner with the opposition? Do you think there
Oh,
are any?
that's an interesting question. To be honest, right, I don't know whether we can really say at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because there is this saying, that there is a saying that power changes you, right? But I would say power doesn't change you. Power reveals who you are, and I think we will really know when a person is the prime minister and then how. But if I were to hazard a guess, I think I can see Chan Chun Sing doing that. To be honest, I was at the IPS forum just before COVID, so it was I think early last year or 2 years ago. Yeah, and he was dealing pretty well with questions from the opposition, from Gumeng Singh, from Professor Tambaya, and in a very respectful manner as well. Both of them, the opposition personalities were respectful. He was respectful to them as well. So I think I can see that. I can see Ong Ye Kung doing that as well, and I haven't seen anything from Lawrence Wong to suggest that he cannot do that as well. So
Agreed.
I think rather than individuals, so it was 2020. Thank you, Jonghan. So 2020. So rather than individuals, I think we really need to look at the party and the party's approach and party's ideology.
Okay. So let's keep it on a light-hearted note and ask something that I think a lot of people are wondering but don't necessarily say out loud. What does Lee Hsien Loong see in Josephine Teo?
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. So I think a defense of Minister Josephine, right, would look like this, right? I think she inherited a lot of problems that came to the fore because of COVID, right? So generally, I think what happened in the dormitories, it wasn't her fault. She inherited it generally, right? And questions have to be asked of ministers before that. And that includes Speaker Tan, that includes Minister Lim Swee Say. And I think it so happened that she was there. Now, at the same time, she didn't help herself by the answer, especially on the apology. I think that answer was pretty much out of touch. And I think she probably, well, I hope she realizes that. Now. And yeah, so that would be definitely something that works against her favor. Now, PM Lee ever mentioned this before, if a minister is underperforming, it is not the PAP's way to throw the minister under the bus publicly. They would only do that if the minister is corrupt or something. So if the minister is underperforming, they slowly relinquish the
Phase
minister
them
of the
out.
duties. Yes, correct. Yeah, so we will see. We'll see whether this is an opportunity for her to redeem herself with the general public, or this is part of the phasing out, and we'll have clarity in 2 to 3 years' time. So I guess what from the PM's perspective is not that Minister Jo Teo has been a terrible minister or anything. She inherited a lot of the problems. Although I think that part you cannot blame her. The answer she gave, I think you can blame her for that, because those were her answers.
Okay, I saw somebody say that it's not in the business of the incumbent to work with the opposition. They're ideologically different to begin with.
I don't necessarily. Sorry, carry on, Megan. Yeah. Megan.
No, I was gonna say that my preliminary thought would be that that looking at the most popular opposition party, which is WP, they are not that ideologically different, and I would push back on the fact that it is not the job of the incumbent to deal with the opposition, right? Because ultimately it's about the votes, and if right now what the climate is looking for is more involvement of the opposition, then it does become in the interest and kind of the duty of the incumbent to do that.
Right. Excellent. So I completely agree with you, Megan. So ultimately it's about the votes, and it may not be the duty, or I mean depends on how you define duty, and that's a philosophical debate, right? I would say it is the duty, because the opposition is also elected by Singaporeans. But let's say you don't think it's the duty, it's fine. But I think it's definitely in the interest of the government to work with the opposition where it can. Just as it is in the interest of the opposition to work with the government where they can. Obviously, they will differ on certain things, and they must differ. Otherwise, there's no need to have the opposition if they don't differ at all, right? But where they can work together, they can. And even when they can differ in an amicable manner, right? So I don't think it's a mutually exclusive either or situation.
And do you think that they are ideologically very different?
Well, it depends on which opposition party you're talking about. The Workers' Party is not ideologically different. The PSP, I don't think, is too ideologically different. The SDP is more ideologically different compared to the other two parties.
Okay, and I have a question regarding kind of like opposition and our population becoming more involved in politics. So do you think our country will become more divided, like example the USA, if our citizens get more involved in politics? So like, if the next generation of leaders or next two generations of leaders start to head towards, a more like democratic regime.
Right. So I think, okay. So one of the things I dislike about comparisons with America, not that we cannot make comparisons with America. I think on some occasions we have to make those comparisons, but on other occasions we must understand that the problems, the demonstrations and the protests that happen in America is not just about democracy, right? It's also about years and years of slavery and institutional racism and people being excluded. It's about the middle class being basically decimated by years and years of neoliberal economic policies, right? So just to pin it on democracy, right, I think that's a very lazy way of understanding the American situation. Now, having said that, there is a possibility. I think people who are more pro-democracy, more pro-freedom, more pro-individual rights, like myself, we have to admit that a possibility is that society may become more polarized. But even without that, society can still become polarized. It's just that you're suppressing the polarization, right? So I think, yes, it could be a possible side effect, but it's something that needs to be done. And then the polarization is what you need to manage, right? And one of the ways to manage it is not to call people who disagree with you as immoral or unpatriotic people, and that's for any side of the aisle. So I would never say somebody who just disagrees with me is somebody who is immoral or less than human being. I wouldn't say that. And I think that's a way for us to prevent polarization. Megan, I think we have about 6 minutes probably.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's too fast, yeah.
Yes, wow, an
Yeah.
hour has flown by. Okay,
Yeah.
since we are like on our last like 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, 5 minutes, let's get to the spicy, pressing question that everybody came here for, which is, what is your prediction for the next PM?
I don't think I have any prediction yet, so I'm sorry to disappoint.
Boo. We're gonna drop
I'm
to like
sorry.
5 viewers.
I'm sorry to disappoint. I mean, I don't mind extending it, but we have to stop first, right? And then we have to come back on, right? So, I don't know if I have a prediction at this point in time, but I would say that it depends on how Chan Chun Sing does in the education ministry, right? And whether it's enough to basically rehabilitate is a strong word, to improve his image, public image. Yeah, I don't know whether it's a done deal or not, the image of him. And don't forget, a lot of people, especially people my age, their first image of Chan Chun Sing is the Kichu incident, and they haven't gotten over that. And those who do not know what I'm talking about, please Google that. Or maybe don't YouTube that. Yeah. So I think he needs to work on that. So I don't have a prediction, but I would say it's between the two of them, Lawrence Wong and Chan Chun Sing, at this point in time. But again, anything can happen. A week in politics is a very long time. Yeah.
Okay, and people are demanding to know why you love Chan Chun Sing so much.
I've already said I don't love him, right? I don't think we should stand politicians, right?
That is so hypocritical.
Wait, I
You
was going to say
totally
except
stand
Nicole
for.
Seah. I was going to say that. Except that, but I admit that is completely that I admit that I shouldn't even be doing that, right? Uh, so rationally I can accept that I shouldn't do that, and you are right to call out the hypocrisy.
Hashtag cancel Walid.
Wow.
I
But
was
yeah,
like quick to jump on that.
so I wouldn't say I think we shouldn't stand politicians, right? We can be fans of politicians, but we cannot be sycophants, right? Because the moment we start standing them, right, then we'll start overlooking their mistakes or being over forgiving when it comes to their flaws and shortcomings. So it's not like I'm super uh, in love with Chan Chun Sing or anything. It's just that from my interactions with him, I do find him to be a very brilliant person, and he gives whatever he says he means, and whatever he means he says. So I really like that. I really like that about a politician, right? Because sometimes it's so difficult to get a straight answer out of a politician, right? Oh, Nabila says that she's a new fan of Megan. She's leaving
What
no
an
stone unturned.
honor.
And but it is so. By the way, Megan, if you don't know, Nabila was actually nominated, I think, by the
Yes,
arts
I voted.
community. Oh, you
I
voted
sent
as
my
well.
vote for
Okay,
her. Yes.
right. Yeah. So yeah. You're doing a pretty good job. I think
Great.
if you start a Teh Tarik series, I'm out of business already. Basically.
Teh Tarik with Megan.
Yes.
Okay, wait, I do have
Yes.
an important question that I think we
Sure.
missed, which is when will the next PM be elected? Like, when can we see the results?
Oh, right. Okay, so PM Lee did say that hopefully by the next election, the 4G would have decided. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, the next PM is not elected, the next PM is selected, right?
Selected, yes.
So we elect the party, and then the leader of that party becomes the prime minister, right? So he did say that he hopes the 4G will decide by the next election. Now, I think it wouldn't be wise for the PAP if they were to decide 1 year before the election and then the new PM, and then for them to do the handover before the election. I think probably if they're going to decide it close to the elections, PM Lee probably would lead the party into the next election and then hand over, and then let that person have 4 or 5 years to build trust.
Yep.
Right? Megan, do you want to continue for about half an hour more? Or
Yes, yeah, let's
do you have
do it.
time? Okay, so I'll
Yes.
just end this. I need to upload this video first because I really am very worried the moment I only have one track of doing things. So in about 3 to 4 minutes, so you guys can go to the toilet and do whatever. So in about 3 to 4 minutes, we'll come back, and Megan, you'll be on standby?
Yes, I will.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Okay, see
thank
you
you. Okay,
guys.
bye-bye.